Hi, it's Elle here at Awakening Cosmic Reality Show. I'm otherwise known as Ileana as well, and today we have Eric J. Hecker with us. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Elka, how you doing today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Days are getting a bit longer up here in Alaska, and we're getting more and more sunlight every day, so it's a beautiful thing, and I'm looking forward to summer.
Excellent. So today we are going to be discussing with Eric his experience working in Antarctica. Eric is a plumber, and he also does other things as well, right, Eric?
Correct. I'm a very well-rounded repairman. I do a lot of remote facilities, construction and maintenance, and more or less, if it's in the middle of nowhere and you need it built or repaired, that's what I can do.
And I'm quite interested in your perspectives of how it was like to work in Antarctica, how you got there, what stations you worked at, what experiences you had. Like, did you see any UFOs? What's in Antarctica? What's so special about these stations? What's under them? Stuff like that, and how you got there in the first place.
Mhm.
So that's what I'd like to discuss with you
Excellent.
today.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer all those questions for you.
Okay, because we've had a few chats, so I'm kind of already familiar with your story, and you've had private chats with me, so I'm going to reference that I already know a little bit about you.
Yeah.
But you've just recently come out publicly,
Right.
so you're sharing your story, and I guess this is your first interview with me?
I think this is my first interview with anybody, actually, now that I think about it. Yes, we have spoken before, but it was more, I guess on the mending and healing process from all of these programs and such. And it was just through these discussions with yourself and others that I have decided to start taking my information and putting it out there publicly. I did recently start a YouTube channel as well, just calling it Deciphering My Experience at this point. I welcome people to come there as well. And see the information that I'm presenting. I'm hoping to get some stuff out there and hopefully to get some people to connect dots and feel better.
Yeah, I think we could discuss a little bit before we go into the Antarctica, the healing stuff, because what you and I were discussing was you had asked me about a soul retrieval and how that process works.
Correct.
And I had scanned you psychically and I said, you don't need a soul retrieval. I think what you need is more physical healing and emotional clearing and balance.
Understood.
Because when I looked at you, I didn't see the trauma-based stuff affecting your life so much, like in the physical. You're very healthy. So it was more like emotional balance that you were looking for in your
Absolutely.
life currently. So that's what I sensed, and I said to you, I don't think soul retrieval would be the appropriate thing for me to do for you, and that other healing modalities, energy work, healing would work for you. So that's, and I said also past life memory retrieval is also a good thing, but at that time I didn't see that you needed that for me. So I guess, and where have you gone? Like what kind of
I
healing
found
are you
an energy
doing?
healer locally that's been doing a wonderful job. All of the exchanges have been fantastic. There's other personnel that I've actually worked with on that staff. It's been amazing, and the growth has been fantastic. I appreciate the input that you had. I mean, this is, again, we all have pieces of the puzzle, and we do what we can to assist each other as best as we can. So again, thank you for your input on that. And I'm glad that I'm on a mending path, and I just hope to be able to assist other people as well.
Yeah, because I remember we were discussing altars a little bit, that people who have been in these Black Ops programs or what's
Correct.
dubbed the Secret Space program and working with ETs and Black Ops, and that you'd notice that there's people discuss different altars. And you asked me, did I think that was going on with you? And I said, no, that's not what I noticed. But you said
Understood.
you sometimes talk with yourself internally, you kind of debate things, right? With yourself.
That was the conversation that we had. Yep.
Can you talk about that a little bit if you're comfortable?
Absolutely. Yes. And this is great because this is part of my mending as well. Because and again, I appreciate your input. But again, we've had another healer that's been closer and more hands-on. So she, gathered a bit of a different perspective. I do have fragmentation issues, which again is standard for these programs. But as you and I were discussing, you were coming more from the physical side and didn't see the problems, and that's correct because I didn't have physical issues. But on a energetic level, which we found was an extremely deep level, and I'm sure you can appreciate that, is what she had found. And it was also corroborated with another healer that was brought in because of the complexities. Things had to be dealt with accordingly. And the fragmentation is complex. As I had mentioned to you previously, for myself, I haven't really heard anybody describe what's going on with me internally. For myself, when I have a decision to be made, it's more like that there's a fork in the road, and I'm presented there as the point man. But behind me is almost like an unending sea of cells, that anytime that decision is to be made, everybody seems to have an input. And at different times, the crowd is larger and smaller than others, you know, depending on the topic at hand, what's being discussed, and the, I guess you would say, strength of the identity and the opinion trying to slam it in my face.
And has the healing helped with that to kind of internally?
Yes, because it's, I guess it's turned less into noise and more of two-way conversation. So it's like, I guess previously when I was trying to ignore the chatter and just pay attention, focus, and do what I want to do, I guess it gets rid of that conflict, because now I can actually, I guess, be more intermingling with the altering opinion, and have things hashed out a little bit easier, and maybe just give them their time, so to say.
Mm-hmm. And what was the internal stuff, if you don't mind me asking? What did the healer work with you on, the fragmentation, or is that private?
Oh, it had a lot to do with the memories that were coming back. So like other folks in the program, it's difficult to, you know, to get these things to link in to your other memories that make more sense. So it had a lot to do with digging back. I guess you would call it like memory regression.
Yes.
If that's the right term.
It is, yes.
I apologize, it's all new to me. But she was doing memory regression and just going back to those points in time where traumatic things occurred, and I guess conversing about them, bringing them to the surface, and then providing, most importantly, I guess, would be other ways of looking at it.
Mm-hmm. And what were the memories that you guys were working on?
That I'll hold on to.
Okay, no problem.
It was program-based stuff, but it was the trauma-based stuff in the programs, and you know, I'm new to mending on this, so for the time being, it's a challenging conversation.
So you're just exploring that and getting comfortable with what happened and why, and just getting answers for it.
Correct, and more or less confirmations was amazing. Because it takes the lunacy out of it. You know, when you can get another person to basically walk around in your head and go, I see why you see things this way. That's very helpful.
Yeah, and I was getting for you that you needed to work with somebody locally, not long distance.
I believe that, because that probably has everything to do with my own personality. I mean, I would need that for it to work for me.
To be in there in person with somebody doing that for you, right?
It would be my character flaw. I mean, I'm a tradesman, so to me, when I work, my hands are on the product I'm working with. It's my bias.
That's perfectly fine. That's what I was sensing with you, because I work remotely with people, mm-hmm. online, mm-hmm. doing the memory retrieval. First, I do the psychic thing. I get the memories. I put it in a report. And then I have a Zoom session with the person, and I explain what's going on, and they can ask me more questions or whatever. But for you, what I felt as a psychic, that you needed hands-on in person. Mm-hmm. So that service would be better for you than working with me long distance. Mm-hmm. And for me, this is not all about money, and clients. The more, the better. No, it's about quality service for the person that I'm working with, and to help them on their journey. So sometimes when I talk with people who are asking about what I do, my abilities, I say, well, yes, you do have memories, but I think maybe for you, you need to work with so-and-so or so-and-so. You could work with me, but you could work with somebody else who might feel more comfortable with, and you needed the in-person stuff, really.
Right. Yeah.
And would you agree that was accurate?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody has their preferences to how they want things done.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Some people can go online and buy a car. Other people have to go to the dealership. Does it mean one way is better than the other? It's just preferential. Either way, you're going to get a car at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm the same. When I go to healers, I want to work with them in person, hands-on. That's just my
See?
preference.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, I mean, what I do is psychic stuff, and I do energy healing as well. But I still must see even when I'm doing the work with them, I must see them in person, like what you and I are on Zoom or whatever. That's how I work, because I prefer to see what I'm working with, who I'm working with, and just to have that human interaction level. I think you're the same way, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm way more partial towards face-to-face conversations. Like, this is cool, but I mean, I would much rather talk to people in person. There's so much lost.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the Antarctica stuff.
Sure.
How did you end up there, and why?
I wound up in Antarctica because I was previously living in New York on Long Island. I had a plumbing company at the time. I was doing, residential and commercial plumbing and heating service 24 hours a day, just a self-employed business, nothing crazy. But in 2008, the economy tanked, as people might recall, and I was not prepared to start shifting gears and make a new business. So for a couple of years, I was struggling really hard. And in 2010, I got a contract to go to the South Pole Station with Raytheon Polar Services. And it was for the summer season. So I went down there. I had a fantastic summer season. I did well enough to where, even though they initially told me they were going to contract me for a year, they still only contracted me for the summer season under the pretense that if I didn't do well, they could bounce me out of there. But I did well for the summer season, so then they extended my contract to go through the winter. So I effectively wound up staying on continent. It was 366 days straight, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. And what was it like working for Raytheon and being on the South Pole Station?
Raytheon was not one of my favorite employers, but the South Pole Station was a extremely interesting location to work at. I mean, that's obvious. The extremes of the environment were a wonderful challenge to my skill set. I mean, as a tradesman, to have to make repairs in those conditions, it requires you to up your skill set. I've soldered 4-inch copper pipe in a minus 80-degree ambient ice tunnel. And I don't know if that really, transfers well to the average person, but I can assure you that's really hard to do. I mean, stuff like that makes me happy about having worked there, because I was able to accomplish things that you won't even get to attempt anywhere else on this planet.
And speaking of those ice tunnels, why are they there under the stations?
The main reason is that they are utility tunnels. So they have the domestic water piping going from the production facility where we pull it out of the ice, and then it traverses through the system, the tunnels, to get to the facilities that need the water distributed to them. Also, the facilities that have waste systems in them. The waste piping goes through the utility tunnels as well, and then that stuff has to go out to what they call a fallout, which is where the waste falls out to. And then obviously they're illuminated, and we have other massive, like the utility tunnels are more like passageways to just get you from place to place. They're much smaller, and they're literally just cut out of the ice. There's no actual structure about them. It's just cut ice. And then you attach stuff to the ice walls to run the pipes down the length of the tunnels. Those tunnels then connect to much larger archway systems, like we have the LO arch or the fuel arch. The power plant is also under the ice in an arch. The vehicle maintenance facility is under the ice in an arch, with the exception being that the end of the vehicle maintenance facility and the power plant both protrude out of the ice to allow access in and out of those tunnels with larger doors. And
during our previous conversation, you mentioned that food is also stored there, right? In these tunnel systems. How does that work and why?
That's in the LO arch, is the logistics arch, and there's about 10 years worth of food stored in there, which I can imagine is just planning ahead for, massive disaster to occur, which I'm not opposed to them having that much food there. It almost looks like a scene from like that Indiana Jones movie, like in the Raiders of the Lost Ark at the end, like when they just have all these crates and they go down this long, almost endless storage facility. Like take that, but just stick it under the ice. And it's just like almost like an endless amount of stored food.
And what do the surface stations, research stations look like? And
the facilities at Pole are mostly elevated right now. They're trying to go with the new style to keep stuff up off of the deck, to have the snow blow through instead of accumulate and get impacted by the structures. The actual Adminston Scott South Pole International Elevated Station is basically shaped like an upside down wing. So the wind, when it hits the leading edge side of the building, which we would call grid north, it then increases velocity as it goes under the building, and that sweeps it away.
Yeah, is it on skids so it's movable?
No, it is not movable. There's a massive, I guess you would say like a steel skeletal structure that's down in the ice, like almost like an embedded foundation. But then from that embedded foundation, they have legs that are coming up, steel legs that come, and then this facility sits on top of the steel legs. And as in time, if they have to, those legs can be jacked up and the whole entire facility can be raised, and then it can be done again. And I believe one more time after that, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was can't remember if it was a total that it could be raised 3 times or it could be raised to a difference of 3 levels. I can't remember.
Yeah, because I've heard the newer ones are actually on skids so they can be like moved, the research facilities.
Those are camps usually. They have those. Those are like the mobile camps. They'll put them on sleds or skids like you're talking about, and they'll drag those things all over the continent. But I would imagine that those are more temporary facilities for active science. I do not imagine that would be permanent facilities in any way, shapes, or form. Those things could blow away in a storm. They could be buried so fast.
Yeah, because I've heard that there's one facility, it's research facility. It's actually not a camp. It's stationed for half of the year until the ice flow starts, and then they get the jacks in and they move it somewhere else. It's a research facility.
That's almost, but they're moving it around by design. I mean, that's like that's like the definition of what I'm getting at is what they refer to on the ice as a movable research camp.
Okay, yeah.
That wouldn't be like Mawson, that wouldn't be Palmer, that wouldn't be Pole, that wouldn't be any of the, like McMurdo. I mean, those are established camps.
Yeah.
Again, there's tons of that mobile activity going on. What you're referencing is the mobile activity, and there's a massive amount of it.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was just trying to understand. What's the difference between the stationary stations and these movable science ones?
They deploy from the more hardened areas, and then that's why there's so many of those different types of cat trains that they call them oftentimes, and those different activities are getting coordinated in the summer season. So in the summer season, they'll bring out units like that, and they'll have them go all over the continent and do all kinds of research. But on the wintertime, that stuff shuts down, and they'll pull all of those, mobile camps and bring them into a hardened facility and store them for the winter.
So what do the stations look like inside? What's the living facilities like, the food, the work you did, the access you had in the station itself?
The living facilities are extremely industrial. The materials are not that pretty. They're designed to take a beating. You know, you're talking like diamond plate and things like that. Excuse me, hard fiberglass panels, things that can be scrubbed and cleaned and then take abuse. They use, you know, the color schemes I would say are like as dazzling as like an elementary school. You know, they're just trying to put flashes of color on things to, you know, have it some semblance of some input. I mean, it's a sensory deprivation is massive there. So they try to do what they can to just, I don't know, give some color.
And when you were staying there, did you have your own room or did you bunk with somebody? What's that like?
In the summer season, they have summer camp, and it's old Korean War style insulated archway tents, wood frames, and then insulated canvas. And they had hot air heating systems in them that were basically useless. I mean, a hot air heating system at the South Pole Station, I thought it was very funny what they were trying to do. But that was the summer season. So it was ruthlessly cold in the tent. Literally like if you were standing up, from your knees down in your living space, the temperature was well below freezing. Well below freezing. So you would have to keep your boots. You would tie your laces up on the top of the tent and have your boots up high. Because if you didn't, you would put your boots on in the morning and they were colder than ice cubes. And you'd be putting your feet into something that are colder than ice cubes. It was a hard lesson learned.
And in the winter time when you were in the station itself, what are the living conditions like?
A lot more cozier, warmer, quieter. The other issue with the Jamesways in the summertime was you were right next to the skiway where the planes were coming in, the Hercs, and that was 24 hours a day. So you'd have Hercs coming in 24 hours a day. They're very loud. And if they weren't actively taking off a landing, they were idling right next to the tents. So the biggest difference for me was when I got to the elevated station, I could not sleep because it was so darn quiet. I was begging to go back outside because I needed the noise to sleep at that point.
And did you have your own bunk inside the station or did you share with anybody?
It was a tiny room that I was issued. I would imagine it was probably the better part of maybe 8 by 10 feet. And it had an elevated bed, it had drawers underneath it, it had a desk to the side of it. It was like a large closet, it almost felt like. The window was, we had a window that went to the exterior that for the winter season, we would put an insulated styrofoam panel into it because we would have to block the lighting from the exterior for the purposes of science. But what we would do is we would black out the window on the outside, and then using that styrofoam piece, you could actually pop that out, and that could be used as a refrigerator in your room for the duration of the winter.
That's interesting. And I remember during our conversation, you told me that you can literally hear people walking out, like outside the corridor of your room, and you know who's coming. How does that work? What's that like?
The place isn't very insulated for sound deafening, so they don't so you can hear things, right? The idea of that knowledge comes from spending so much time in such close quarters, right? The winter season, there was only 49 people there in total. So that's myself and 49 other people. There's no cell phone service. There's no internet. There's no television. There's nothing going on that you don't make happen, you know? So over the course of the day, there's only so much information coming in. If I was working with you all day long, I would know your heart rate. I would know your breath rate. I would know your cadence of your step as you went down the hallway. There's nothing else to pay attention to. So yeah, if I was on the first floor and it's just an open ceiling above me and somebody was walking down the hallway on the second floor, I would know who it was immediately just by on their pace count.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hear somebody around the corner. If I was working and there's somebody around the corner and I could hear somebody, you know, doing their work and breathing and doing what they're, I would know who that is too. I would know their breath rate. I mean, you became so acclimated to people, it was off the wall.
And while working inside the station, what kind of security clearance and access did you have?
It's not really like a security clearance per se, but there was access restrictions. It was not on paper considered a classified or secret anything facility. But for just standard operating procedures of any facility, you certainly have certain doors locked to certain personnel. You don't need every single person getting into the power plant. You don't need every single person getting into your electrical sub panels. So it was only limited really by job classification. Like, what did you need to have your hands on? And if you needed to, you'd have a key to that door and you could get in there.
And what did you have access to that you were fixing on the station and monitoring?
I had to get into everything because I was maintenance. So, I mean, that was my job, was to go into every building, into every tunnel, and converse with everybody in every department and make sure everything's, you know, working the way that they needed it to on that day.
What's the food like in the cafeteria in that place?
I was pretty content with the food. As I mentioned earlier, with the ice tunnels having all of that frozen food down there, lest we forget the temperature fluctuates, I think, between minus 60 and minus 80 down there, ambient. So I felt it was a miracle that these guys were able to accomplish what they did in the galley with ingredients that had lived such a harsh life and been treated so roughly. You know, it's not like these guys are getting fresh cuts of meat and fresh veggies. The boxes, I would read them regularly just to see, you know, what do we have down here, you know? And I was kind of looking to see what was the oldest thing that I could find, what was the newest thing that I could find, what's the most out of the, you know. But what I found was that the most recent supply that I saw, and this was in 2010 that I was there, so I think the most recent supply that I saw was expired in 2006. So I used to joke around and say that Raytheon must have had a purchasing agent like flying all around the world and being like, wait, don't throw that out. We'll buy it and the police will eat it.
And the pay must have been, we talked about the pay scale and that it's not what it seems. It's not glamorous going to Antarctica.
No, not at all. The pay is, as far as I was concerned, was terrible. It was terrible pay, and it's because everybody wants to go to the South Pole. There's people with PhDs that are, you know, sweeping floors because that's the only opportunity they have to get there. And
you can't really go anywhere beyond what your job description is, right? You can't just take a sled or a snowmobile and just jet off wherever you want to go, right? Because
you're not supposed to, for sure. I mean, there's rules and regulations for everything, but it's the winter time at South Pole sometimes, and there's nobody else outside. I mean, that's the benefit of doing what I was doing. Is you're right. Would they want me taking a snow machine and going wherever I wanted to? Absolutely not. Was there rules against it? I'm pretty sure that there was. Do you get lost sometimes? Absolutely.
Yeah.
The wind blows.
Yeah. And
in whiteout conditions, sometimes you veer off
course, right? You can veer off course and get, like, there's snow. It's snow and ice, right?
That's it. It's not snowing like you would ever think, where it is dropping. It's more blowing around. The precipitation falling for the year is minuscule. It's almost non-existent. The amount that falls every year is minuscule, but the amount that blows around constantly is savage. Lots of it.
And the old stations were underground in the beginning, right? That's how they were built at first, and then above ground.
They were initially, the first station put in 57. They did lay it on top of the surface, but it was with the consideration they knew that it was going to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And then they had other renditions. They did do the dome which was supposed to blow the snow away better than it did, was the idea. And then, following Buckminster Fuller and geodesic domes and strength, they knew that it could get buried and hold and all that stuff. But it turned out that it was more work than it was worth to keep like a functional area around it. So that's why it kind of got condemned. And I think it was the year before I showed up, I believe it was 2009, that they completed the disassembly of the dome. So the dome was there, I think, from 75 until 2009.
So you were working on the above ground station?
Yes, correct. When I showed up in 2010, they were converting from the construction phase of the elevated station to the first season of operations and maintenance was the season that I showed up.
And how do you get there to Antarctica?
Planes, planes, and planes. At the time, I was coming from New York, so I flew from New York over to Denver for some training at Raytheon, and then from Denver over to LAX. LAX was to the coast of New Zealand, which was Auckland, and then from Auckland to Christchurch, where was basically the Raytheon Polar Services headquarters in New Zealand for Antarctica. So we would get our gear over at the Christchurch facilities, and then we flew from there in a C-17, which now it's a military-style plane, and that gets you to McMurdo. And then I went from McMurdo to South Pole in another military-style plane known as a C-130, a Hercules.
And when you were working inside the station itself, what's the ratio like between men and women staff and what they do?
I was just talking to somebody about this. We were trying to remember the numbers. It was 49 total in the facility, and we were trying to guess that it was maybe a dozen to 15 females out of that number. So that would be our overall ratio. But as far as tasking goes, I mean, it's completely varied. There's a complete opportunity for a female to be working in any capacity in the program. They were. There was lots of carpenters. There was lots of females running equipment, doing logistics work. There's an equal cut of males and females out in the elements.
Okay, so they're right out there openly working outside, just like any guy would.
Yeah, sure. There's no limits.
Just to give the audience an understanding, what goes on in Antarctica and these stations.
And it's very much like an entire community just squished into one spot, because you still have to have all of the things that you deal with every day. You still need to have water coming in, waste going out. You still need to have heat. You still need to have power. You have to have all the stuff that you need to support science. So you need to have personnel that can attend to, every bit of this stuff in the winter season to give you some insight to the community, right? So now in the winter season, we throttle down on personnel, but there's still a lot of tasking that has to occur. So now, in addition to my role as a plumber and a tradesman, right? Another role that I always maintained was I was the what they called the attack team lead on the fire brigade, right? So the alarms go off, something's the matter. I have to throw on a whole bunch of firefighting gear along with my partner on that attack team, and then we have to gear up and be the first one to go through the doors, breach into the smoke, find out what's going on, and mitigate the problem. That's another job we had to do every time the alarms went off, which happens. That's 2 roles. Now we have cleaning duties, just standard community stuff. We call it house mousing. So we have scheduled house mousing events. There's daily stuff that has to occur. There's weekly stuff that has to occur. So we have little different house mouse teams that get assigned different, weekly tasking, your daily tasking, and you have to coordinate that into your day. It's like, now not only do I have to, go fix that pipe. Oops, the alarm went off. I have to go put that fire out. Ooh, I forgot I have to go dust the shelves this afternoon. So there's always stuff to do. It's just that for the most part, it's kind of boring. You spend a lot of time just looking at stuff that's not broken and dusting things. And then all of a sudden the alarms go off and it gets more fun.
And you had to, in our previous discussion, you had to go in minus cold temps, fix something that what was it? Was it water or heating, something where
That
you
was
had
the
to?
domestic water broke one day. The alarms went off as normal, and it announced that we had a failure in the rod well. So the rod well is our primary water production system, and the heating system had broken that provides hot water to go down 500 some odd feet, and we maintain a large bulb of about 500,000 gallons of water that we, through a heat exchanger, keep that wet instead of being frozen, and then we can pull out from that to be our domestic water supply. So that system had broke, and obviously we needed water. So we spent, it was approximately, I think it was 23 and a half hours straight to mitigate that problem. And that building without heat was a smaller building out in the elements. I think the temperatures during the repair were in the mid minus 90s, minus 93 to minus 95. And the task required us to pull the pump head up out of the well. And I believe it was 550 feet of line that we would have to pull up 6 feet. And then there was 3 Velcro straps that we had to take off, that in case the piping system that was going down was insulated. So then we'd have to take the insulation off, put this stuff aside, bring it up another 6 feet, same process, 3 straps off, insulation off, 6 more feet. We did that for the entirety of the run. And then we had the pump head assembly that we had to deal with. We had to replace the pump head assembly that was on there. And then we had to do the exact process in the reverse, 6 feet, get the insulation on, put the 3 straps on, drop it, and just, I stood in that spot, I can't tell you for how long, just doing the exact same thing over and over and over. Yeah, I mean, that's the job. Fix things fast, because Mother Nature's coming, and she likes breaking stuff.
And you explained some of the technologies that are out there on the stations. Like, what is the ELF system?
Well, that was the interesting one, because the ELF is part of what I'm, I guess, putting on the table for folks to consider when people say, well, what's going on and how, what are they not telling us? ELF is one of the things they're not telling us. It's on.
What is it, though?
The ELF is a extra low frequency radio antenna / transmitter.
And
according to what a lot of people think, it's a dismantled, defunct system.
but it talks to submarines, doesn't it?
That's what they say that it can do. There's a multitude of things that it can do. There's a laundry list of things that you can do with ELF. And communicating with submarines is certainly one of the things that you can do with it. All I know is it's on.
What are the other things you could potentially do with it, or is it something you can't talk about?
I can tell you what potentials are, but I can't tell you what they're doing with it. I can just tell you that, I mean, this is known science. ELF waves and what can be done with them. I don't want to pretend to allude to what they are doing with them. I just know that when they say the system's off, I know it's not.
And what are the potentials? What can be done with it other than talking to submarines?
I think it has to do with HARP technology and targeting of such things like that, that it becomes a component to bigger systems, potentially.
Yeah, that sounds right. And I read up on it, and I noticed that some people that worked on these stations reported that it's on several of the stations, the ELF system. But yeah, it's active, so it's not classified.
It's not a classified tech, so to say, because it's all existing. The oddity is that they're kind of operating under the pretense that it's not operating.
Yeah, it's not advertised.
It's not advertised. They're not advertising that they have this system operating there.
Yeah, it took me
I was not told to not talk about it because they told me it was off. I mean, so I really never even had a discussion with them about it. It was just, I mean, I showed up as a maintenance guy and I was told, this switch goes to this and this is on and this is off and bop, 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 bop. But long story short, after being there long enough, the ELF's not off.
Yeah, and it took me like an hour to find somebody who worked in these stations and talked about it. They like had a full article. So reading that was interesting, very interesting. I kind of wanted to have a discussion with you about that today. Just because you briefly mentioned it last time, but we didn't talk what the thing is, why it's there. And I don't care to speculate what they really do with that. That's their business. It's out there. It's on the stations. And you also wanted to discuss the neutrino counter?
Oh, the neutrino detector.
Yes.
That's another one that I just find really interesting because it is a very important device. But it seems that a lot of people are misinformed as to what this thing does. And it saddens me because it's almost like it like misdirects the movement. People almost feel like they're constantly getting these aha moments when it comes to the ice cube neutrino detector. You know, anytime they place a story on that, they'll be like, you know, oh, they said that we're getting neutrinos from the middle of the earth. And it's the detector in relative space is a point in space. It doesn't care where the neutrino comes from, and the neutrino doesn't care that the earth exists. So if something's coming through the earth, it doesn't mean that it came from the earth. It just means that it came from something on the other side of the earth. You know, it could be a star a trillion light years away, but if it just so happens that at the time that the earth rotates, if the South Pole is on one side of the planet and this other thing is going from the other side, the neutrino will go right through the planet. The planet doesn't stop it. So it can be detected from that direction and not mean anything about it supposedly coming from like the center of the earth.
And does this neutrino detector, does it have a telescope attached to it?
It's not a telescope like you're thinking. There's other telescopes, but this is its own independent scientific functioning device. It's not a telescope. What they're referring to it as is a detector. So the idea is that they melt the ice at the South Pole Station. We're at approximately 9,300 feet of elevation, and that's elevation of ice on top of the ground. So what they do is they use steam lines to melt the ice and go down all the way down and then hollow that out. They remove that water and make almost, I would say, it was approximately a 34-inch diameter column that they remove out of the ice. I've stood over one of these holes. So imagine it's a 34-inch wide hole that goes down 2 miles. Yeah, it was scary. It's like you just step over it really fast. You're like, wow, like kind of freaky. You're not allowed to drop stuff down either, so you have to be careful because they don't want any other stuff down there for interfere with the experiments, I guess. But then what they do is once they have that hole, they then take a cable and they drop down what they call a string of DOMs, digital optical monitors. And the way that they function is they refill the column with the water and ice so that the DOMs are now suspended in the ice. And then what they're waiting for is for a neutrino to come from any direction in the cosmos. It doesn't matter. These DOMs, there's an array. It's like 2 miles of an area where they have all these different strings of DOMs in the ice. So effectively, it makes a big network of eyeballs, basically. And then as the neutrinos pass through this particular type of ice, neutrino is extremely small, almost massless particle traveling at, close, or potentially above the speed of light. But when this neutrino, hits a nucleus, there's a reaction that occurs. You get the production of what's known as a muon, as well as a blue flash of light. So the DOMs, the digital optical monitors, now observe the blue light, and because of them being in a network, they can basically triangulate the direction of source. And that's the purpose of the detector, is to find the angle of the source and then spread that information to other telescopes about the planet, and then they will try to dial in and see what they can ascertain from that information.
And we also discussed what are the other telescopes out there beside these stations? What do they do?
They have the South Pole Telescope, which is looking for other suns and planets and solar systems and stuff like that, I guess you would say. I guess basically other celestial bodies is what they're looking for, you know, and they are doing a very good job of that. They're finding so much so fast. I don't know if people are aware of that either. And I mean, that was back in 2010, and they were getting better and better and better and better at it.
And you had a bit of an experience yourself when you were out there. You saw something flash in the sky. Can you
Yes.
talk
I've
about
been
that?
thinking about that so much more from our conversation, because it was like when we were talking about that, I hadn't really thought about it for a long time. So it was kind of, I guess, I don't know, it made me think about it. The trajectory thing is what gets me. But regardless, the story was that I was walking back from what they call the dark sector, which is where the South Pole Telescope, the MAPO facility, and the IceCube neutrino detector are located. They're away from the elevated station, but part of my daily routine to go inspect. And they call it the dark sector because it's radio darkness. I'm not allowed to transmit when I'm out there because it'll interfere with the science experiments going on. I could listen. If there's a problem, I can be communicated to, but I can only transmit if I'm in an emergency circumstance, so that's the dark sector. On returning from the dark sector, I was doing my normal routine, trying to watch my footing and pay attention to where I was going. It was a little bit of a whiteout condition, I think, on a low level that day where the snow was blowing across low, so it's hard to watch your feet. So I was just trying to get my way back to the station. And for whatever reason, I just kind of decided to change my angle, I guess, and look up and get out of that low whiteout, because the sky is beautiful in the wintertime. So if you have the option to not pay attention to where you're walking and look up, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Tons of stars and density clusters. It's indescribable. So I go to look up, and just as I look up, I have the elevated station is in the distance in my view. But as I lift my head up, coming from grid north, the front side of the station, moving to the rear, grid south, was something that, like, from my perspective, looked like bigger than the moon, like this big, giant, massive, round, what appeared to be like a rocky surface, like kind of smooth but rocky, like almost like, I don't know, like rough marble. Like it wasn't smooth marble, but it had some texture to it. But now it was shooting through the sky and was completely emblazoned in fire, raging fire, and billowing behind it. And then maybe for a certain section behind it was fire. But then to the rear of the fire, it was turning into smoke and making a massive smoke trail. And then from the front of the fireball to the rear of the smoke trail encompassed maybe about 1/3 of the whole view of the sky, which is a big section of sky there, because when we're at that altitude, unimpeded, nothing from horizon to horizon, it's a lot of sky. And I looked up and I watched this thing go across that whole entire horizon at such a velocity, I can't even begin to pretend to have an idea of how fast it was going. It's the fastest thing I've ever seen in the world. And the really profound thing to me, along with the speed, was it never deviated from a pinpoint straight line at the altitude that it was at. It was not coming up from really high and crashing down into the ice. It wasn't coming from really far off and slowly working its way down in the distance. This thing maintained a very even, constant, determined, powered path from horizon to horizon. It just did it really low. So to me, I mean, it was a burning rock. But yet it seemed to be a burning rock under power directed flight.
So it could have been a craft or something.
It could have been. I couldn't cancel it out because I was waiting for it to crash then. I mean, because at the height that I saw it at, I can't imagine that it could have gone the distance that I saw it continue without impacting.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And you also described some of your fun adventures, that you met some of the science staff, that you met an interesting IT guy. Can you describe some of that and what was that all about?
It's a really interesting environment there because, like I had mentioned earlier, everybody wants to be there. So you have folks with really amazing skill sets showing up to do, I mean, for what would be considered simple things. Like we have an IT guy, right? Every facility has an IT guy. They need an IT guy. Our IT guy used to be like the head of R&D for Google. But now he's just an IT guy at South Pole. Because, I mean, he wanted to go to South Pole, so he gets to go to South Pole. But you get to just sit at a desk and be an IT guy here, because that's all we need. And if you want to do that, you can do that.
Did he ever go out with you on anything outside or?
Oh, he would. Yes, he would. He would do a lot of fun stuff. He would do. He was very musical, so he would do a lot of fun things and host events. We were very much incentivized to maybe like make a party happen on a Friday or Saturday night, and our IT guy would do that pretty regularly. He was very musical, always writing songs, trying to cheer people up. He was a really happy-go-lucky guy.
And what about the scientists? You said you got to interact with them and watch some of the things that they did. What was that like?
That was fantastic because I'm kind of like a science nerd. I love all the new tech. I love trying to, connect things and figure out new things. So that might actually be the really cool thing that I would say I got out of it, was having that direct contact with these scientists and these experiments. They would oftentimes have seminars and classes on what they were learning. So, I mean, we were getting sat down and taught stuff that they just learned the week before. And it's not even going to be, disseminated at a college level. It's probably still not even there yet. And
what were they learning in these seminars? Or is that can't talk about that? I can, but this is the frustrating thing with science, because everybody likes to say that you can't argue science, which is ridiculous, because this is what scientists do all day long, is they argue science. They wake up and they say, I'm going to find out something new today that makes what science knew yesterday wrong. That's literally their job. That's my favorite part about science, is finding the new stuff. So I found it interesting that I would be able to, sit in these classes, listen to what they're saying, but I would also take some reference knowledge and apply it. And even the stuff that they're learning right now, you can still drive a truck through. It still doesn't answer everything, or they'd be done looking. So these are the types of things that I would communicate with the scientists and kind of just joke around on the side and say, why do you teach this stuff? It's wrong. This is not true. And they would just laugh and they would say, yeah, we know, but this is the best we know. So this is how we live. We teach what we know, knowing it's wrong. But yet nobody appreciates that. They'll just sit there screaming from the mountaintops, you can't argue with science. Okay, I can. Yeah, because you have different perspectives on those things. And in our last conversation, you talked about the isolation of being in Antarctica and what it felt like when you were inside the station itself and outside. Can you discuss some of that? Yes, it is. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of sensory deprivation. There's not much going on. I enjoyed going outside because to me, outside was something to deal with. The storms to me were fun. They were challenging. I felt like I was accomplishing something. Inside the station, it was nice. It was comfortable. The heat was on. I kept the lights on. It was like everything was good. But it was boring, It just is what it is. You can only have so many conversations with someone in a year at a place with nothing going on. How many times could I walk up to you in the hallway and go, so what's new, El? Not often. So did you bring books? Yeah, there's a great library there. There's a fantastic library. They had a fantastic DVD collection. They have the world's largest known collection of beta cassettes. I swear somebody needs to go down there and actually look at what they have on beta. I feel it's a fortune's worth of information that they should not let disappear. It's just sitting there. And I remember you said you got to go to a store and buy stuff there. What was that like? That's just it's a company store. It's more of a joke. It's probably, that room might be, I don't know, 30 feet by 30 feet, and it has a cash register, and
They have tchotchkes and items that you can buy that say South Pole Station in Antarctica and stuff like that. T-shirts, hats, you know, shot glasses, mugs. But they also have, you know, candy bars and Raisinets and, you know, some Doritos or stuff like that, which is kind of ridiculous because they still have that stuff in the galley. So it's almost like just giving you the opportunity to feel like you have somewhere to go shopping. It's like, if you want a free candy bar, you can go to the galley. If you want to pay for Reese's peanut butter cups, you can, I guess, pay for me here if you want, you know.
Could you only buy beer from that store, though?
They did have beer. They did have booze. They had cigarettes, you know, nail clippers, Q-tips. I guess they might have had socks or something, you know, just, you know, basic things that you might need. But it was just, I guess it was just more for like at the end of the day, the store would be open. As you know, like, you know, you end your shift at 5 o'clock or something, and they might have the store open from 5 to 7. And that would be, again, community tasking where people would volunteer to man the register.
And how was your mail delivered? If you wanted to send something out to a loved one or to a friend, like, you probably didn't have access to the internet. So
there was no mail, not for the winter season. In the summer season, it was limited with the flights and stuff like that, and you could potentially get stuff. The winter season, for 9 months of winter, that was it. 49 people in the station. Good luck. See you in 9 months.
Okay, so it's very isolated and zero communication with the outside world, basically.
Limited. They would have satellite passes, and when the satellites would go by, we would get short windows of opportunity to make a communication. So you could theoretically make a phone call, send out an email, and make a communication, in theory, when the satellite went by. But with that being said, the entire facility has approximately the computing power of a residential router as far as what's available to the personnel at that window slot. So now everybody tries to jump on and get what they need done, excuse me, but you can only have so much happen so fast. And if they need that bandwidth for science, they're going to throw everybody off and transfer their science data.
So it's basically you yourself and your thoughts at night, and just, how did that feel for you?
It's very interesting. It's extremely transformational because it is very introspective. You don't have a lot of other stuff to think about and deal with. You get a crash course on yourself and interactions with others. I mean, it's a very real, tangible thing. It was a long time. I mean, 1 year there for myself personally, it felt like 10 years easily. It felt like an extremely long time. At the 6-month mark, I remember my emotions at the time. It was challenging. I mean, this was a hard job to do, to be there. So at the 6-month mark, I remember in my mind's eye having difficulty thinking of stuff off the ice and feeling like, wow, I've been here forever. I've been here like 6 months, and I feel like I've been here forever. But then now knowing I have 6 months to go, it's like, man, this is starting to feel like I have forever to go now, you know? And it started getting really challenging at the 6-month mark and feeling exhaustive. But I guess once I crossed that, got over that peak, I guess, it started to get progressively easier.
And you've been to other places, not just Antarctica. You've been all over the world.
I've been to a fistful of places. I'm trying to increase my traveling skills. My girlfriend is the most traveled person I have ever met, and I'm trying to catch up to her. So it's great to have a partner/tour guide. But I also do a lot of interesting work that gets me to a variety of places. Currently, I'm doing a lot of stuff all over Alaska. I've done remote oil field facilities, remote research facilities, a lot of what they call man camps, which is just the support personnel for other facilities and functions. I've done remote gold mine work, a variety of things here in this state.
Yeah, and you also were in the submarine service?
Yes, I was in the submarine service right after high school. That was a very interesting period as well, that I'm trying to figure out a way to appropriately bring that conversation up as well. But yes, I have a history in the submarine service. and I do want to talk about things there, but it's one of the stories I have to be more cautious about how I present it.
Yeah, what can you present from that? Just interesting.
I could present that it was also a very transformational time of my life. It was the first time that I came across Raytheon, which is why when I had said I was going to the South Pole with Raytheon, I wasn't too contented about that. I don't really care for them. They're not a very admirable company. But with that being said, it was an eye-opener for me back when I got into the submarine service, just to see that this world is a lot more complex than we've been presented. I'll just start with it that way. It was a real eye-opener. I had a very inquiring mind, and I could see immediately the dual duty of a lot of things. There was the presentation and then the possibility of something else, and I would often question the possibility, and I would get in a lot of trouble for that.
Well, what do you do in submarine service? Like, what's the general job description? Just a person.
My job that I was contracted for with the Navy was what they called the fire control technician, and that was the weapon systems, and that's what I was training for. I was officially in a training capacity for that role when I was separated from the submarine service.
So do you have to like do maintenance down there, fix things, or calibrate?
On the submarine?
Yes.
That was not what I was training for.
Okay.
Technically, every submariner, when they get to a boat, they have to qualify the boat, and that's why they wear their dolphins. So do they have the capacity to fix everything on there? They most certainly do. I was not up to that point in my training yet. I was still on the weapon systems.
Okay, so that's basically just like, what is it and why? What do people do on that? That's basically kind of questions that I have just general.
I would say it's probably really similar to the environment of South Pole Station, in so far as that you have, again, this micro environment where everything has to be provided, except this situation is much less about supporting science and more about supporting other activities.
Yeah, because what submarines do is they dive deep under the ocean and they go to places that are very secluded and remote, and they do investigation and other things.
Correct.
From what I know about just general research about what submarines do.
The general great way to look at it is submarines go under the water and go away and do whatever they want to do, and they come back and tell us whatever they want to tell us they did.
Or it's very covert missions that are classified with the Navy that nobody hears about or can know about. It's classified.
It's been quite a few decades that we've all been familiar with the term plausible deniability, and there's really nothing that the government has in their tools of discretion that provides them more plausible deniability than a submarine.
Yeah, exactly, because it goes deep, and they're building better, brand new submarines that can do more things than they used to.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your old granny's submarine anymore. It's different.
Yeah.
And I've heard so many things about Antarctica, that they have Atlantean outposts there, that they have these things, black basalt things created by ETs buried under the ice, all kinds of wild things coming out of Antarctica. Mm-hmm. Like, would you be able to get to those things if they're there? Or you can't just, like you said, you can't just go off and do whatever.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's like you can technically, right? It's just the environment is the prohibitive factor. Everybody likes to say that all these governments are, preventing you from going. Technically, you can. There's nothing stopping you from buying a plane, buying a boat, whatever you need. Granted, you have to be rich, but technically, we could also theoretically get together and fund a trip if we wanted to, if we were collective enough. Nothing's stopping us, right? But with that being said, let's say you do get a plane. Let's say you do get a boat. Let's say you do show up to the coastline of Antarctica. Now what? Which way are you going to go look? How much time do you have to survey? How much resources do you have? And what kind of logistical chain do you have? Because now you're getting right back into things like Ernest Shackleton and Adamson and Scott, and you're getting into straight up exploring. That takes a savage amount of skill and preparing, and nobody's doing that. We're getting people that are showing up on a cruise ship with a camera, standing on the coast, and they're going, I went to Antarctica, and I didn't see any secret bases. So there's no secret bases. And that's just ridiculous logic. I mean, it doesn't mean that there are bases either. It's just ridiculous logic for negating them. I mean, I can't prove that there is a base. And I was there for 366 days straight at a base. And I still can't prove it. I also can't disprove it because I was only at one geographical point on a massive continent.
Exactly.
So I don't want to make the false presentation to even begin to speak for the whole continent. I was at one facility. That would be like anybody in the SSP being on one ship and now trying to speak for every fleet that exists out there. That would be a little bold.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember you talked about the hydroponics and the food growing at South Pole. Can you discuss that a bit?
Yes, there was a hydroponic garden, greenhouse as we refer to it, and it was in the interior space of the first floor. Ooh, am I getting that? Yes, I think it was the first floor. Yes, I'm like forgetting my own structure. But it was actually a wonderful space because unlike the entire rest of the facility, it was kept warm and humid. So when you walked into the greenhouse, it just felt nice. It was like a warm hug. You could walk in there and the warmth and the moisture just kind of wrapped around you, and you just wanted to like just sit there for a second and soak it in, because everywhere else is 0% humidity. So you could tell the difference. But it was a hydroponic garden. I guess you would say it was maybe similar. I don't know if you've ever been at a florist, like the back end of a florist, similarly sized setup, and just basically a rudimentary hydroponic system to keep the roots wet, to make sure that the plants are getting the right nutrients and stuff like that. It wasn't a very high production facility. It was supplemental, so that you could just, you can't say you didn't have anything fresh, but we didn't have a massive amount of fresh stuff.
But you did have some veggies and some of the meat that would be taken from underground that was frozen, and then you guys got the food.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you do get your basics, like your vegetables and your meat and some protein, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there was no shortage of food. There was tons of food to be had. It was perfectly tasty. I'm not going to say it was the best food that I've ever had in my life. There was nothing wrong with it. I don't ever remember turning my nose at something that I would have eaten outside of there as well. There's certain things I don't like, so I wouldn't eat it. But if it was something that I ate outside of South Pole and I tried it there, it was fine.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned Project Iceworm last time in our conversation. Yes. What is that?
Project Iceworm was in Greenland, and it was a top secret program by the US government where they were constructing ice tunnels and archways, but they were secretly putting nuclear weapons in them. And those videos are available. You can look up the construction videos for Project Iceworm, and they will show you in great detail how they manufactured in the ice to make those structures. And that is the exact same building systems and structures that were utilized at Pole, the same setup. So if you were to watch that video, you'll get a visual of what I'm discussing as the archways at Pole. It's the same thing.
Yeah, that's how it links. I was just like in my mind, like you need to ask him that question because it's very important.
And that, the reason that you probably asked it is because you're probably reading my mind, is that the importance that I feel is that the government is kind of efficient sometimes. If they find something that works, they like to double down on it. It's kind of, you can see it in the programs when you start to study and research what they're putting their money into. When they get a return on investment, they usually reinvest. And they'll try it again and they'll try it again until they stop getting investment money to do that project. I suspect that potentially seeing Project Iceworm and knowing what it became, that if we look around the planet and find other similar types of construction, we might want to inquire, was it a similar activity?
Yeah. What would you say was the most interesting or special thing that you got to do in Antarctica at the station or outside of it? Like any adventures, something that really stands out in your mind?
I would have to say it was doing my rounds and going from building to building and battling Mother Nature, to be honest. I mean, I'm trying to be humble about it, but it was like an empowering thing I mean, there was one day of all of the storms that I had gone out in particular, that they told me that I was not allowed to go outside. And I had been out in some really bad stuff previously, but on this day we had a really bad storm, and they said, no outside operations, everything's shut down. And I said, that's not really happening. I said, I didn't come here to do everything that I did up until this day to go home and at the end say there was that one day that I wished I had gone outside and tried to do what I can do. So I told them I was doing my rounds anyway. And that to me was a really wild adventure. I almost got lost a couple of times. It was, raging whiteout conditions and wind. But so many other times that I had been out there, and getting challenged. I mean, there were times where it was hard out there and I had to think to myself, like, you can do this. Mother Nature's trying to kill you, but you're going to win this right now. You're going to make it. And on this particular day, it was at exponential levels. I was getting close to thinking that I was going to have to call in that I was effectively lost. We had a flag line that went from the elevated station to the dark sector that I had mentioned previously. And those flags are spaced at about 8 feet apart from each other. And on this particular day, the wind was blowing so hard, and so hard, also loudly. Part of the purpose of the flags is that you can hear them flapping in low winds. But it was so loud that day that I couldn't hear them. And if I stepped 2 steps away from the flag that I was at, I could look back and not even see that one. So I was losing the flag line visually. I couldn't hear it audibly. And what wound up happening was the wind was blowing again in from grid north. That's our primary wind direction. So it was on my right side as I was heading to the dark sector. And I was overcompensating into the wind, thinking that it was blowing me further to the other side of the flag line, but I was pushing too hard into the wind and deviating into a zone that there's no more flag lines. And if I kept doing it, I was going to get lost. And I just kept messing that one up this day. And I just said, I got my radio out of my jacket because you keep it inside to kind of keep it warm. But I started getting it prepped. I started pulling out and kind of almost prepping my SOS conversation, like thinking, all right, I'm going to have to start trying to remember where was I and how am I going to direct them? And what's the last thing that I did see and how much time has passed? And I was just starting to prep my SOS call. And I saw the flag line again. It just popped up in the middle of the white. I saw the flash of red and I hustled back over that way. And I was able to stay on track from that point out. And I was just, my heart was racing and I had deviated off of the line so many times that I did scare myself.
And what type of clothing do you wear when you go out for rounds and to keep warm? Can you describe that? What kind of gear you have to be in?
It is, it's very specific to the task at that moment. So basically we have like a coat room right inside the entry and exit doors where we keep our gear. And I have a variety of clothing in that room that I would have to gauge when I'm going to go outside. How far away am I going to go? What's the actual temperature? What's the wind direction? Am I going to be carrying metal things with me that are going to be heat sinks and drop my temperature? So there's a lot of variables to consider for your clothing before you go out. But let's say worst case scenario, I'm going to be going outside in very bad conditions for an extended period of time with a lot of stopping, which matters because if you're going to keep going, you can actually overheat. But if you're going to stop, the ice itself is minus 60 degrees. So with your feet staying stationary versus walking, you literally cool down twice as fast. But worst case scenario, I could exit that building and I could have anywhere between 30 and 40 pounds of clothing on, which would incorporate sometimes up to 14 pieces of headgear.
And what tools would you be taking with you for your work that you do outside and inside the station?
The stuff that I would take with me always would be a backpack, my radio, extra batteries, food, water, anything specific emergency gear related to that task. And then it would be, in addition to that, going into that same backpack would be task-related tools and materials. If I was just going to be going to do PMs, it might just be a flashlight and paperwork and just go look at things. If I had an actual repair to do, it could be stuff in my backpack that I throw some wrenches in and some some materials. It could be that I have to load up an entire drag sled and take a whole bunch of gear and bring it somewhere and make a repair and haul a whole bunch of stuff. You might have to haul a few loads of stuff. It depends on the day.
And what's a drag sled? Do you drag it yourself, or is...
Yep. Yeah, what you would normally see behind a snow machine when scientists are outside working in the elements, and they put the sled behind the snow machine with the gear on it, and you drag that sled to the job site. Well, at the South Pole, when the temperature hits minus 50 degrees ambient or colder, they say that it's too detrimental to the equipment for it to be outside. So they don't want to break the snowmobile. So you get to drag it instead.
So what's the mode of transport when you do go outside and it's a long distance? What are you on?
My boots. It was walking.
It's walking. And for the scientists, other than just walking in boots, what do they have to use?
In this winter season, if it was minus 50 degrees, they were walking too.
Okay.
The equipment was out of commission at minus 50 degrees and colder, which was almost the entire winter season, except for basically emergency tasks or scheduled events that would be for equipment operators, right? So they would have heavy equipment inside being kept warm, and then if the equipment operator had a task that he would have to do, he would be issued that equipment, go out and do the task. But the snow machines were basically put away and not being issued out unless it was for like emergency use. We had all kinds of equipment in the VMF that was kept warm and at the ready. It was emergency use only, mostly in the winter.
So it's just basically walking outside and inside the station when you do your work.
Correct.
Okay, just to get a general idea, like what you were doing and how you were doing, those types of things are very interesting to me.
Yeah, no, I totally understood. I wish I could give you a visual. I have videos and stuff. If you go back on my Facebook page, I have videos and stuff. You can take a peek.
Okay, and how can people contact you and get in touch with you?
Probably right now, the best thing would be that new YouTube page that I started, which is Deciphering My Experience. There is I opened up a new email on that one. I believe it is decipheringme369@gmail.com. If anybody wants to reach out and communicate, has any questions, wants to figure out what I'm up to and what I'm doing, I'm trying to do my best to get information out there and help the community and connect the dots and get folks like us talking more for the benefit of the community. So if anybody has any thoughts on how they can help or how I can help better, I'm all ears, because to me, better's better. Whatever we can do to improve the lives of the people in our community that are hurting and negatively impacted, I think we should just do what we can to make improvements.
Yeah, and I think you gave us a realistic accounting of what it's like to go to Antarctica as a tradesman, right?
Yeah, it's, you fix what you have to fix, and you do what you have to do, and you just get things done.
Yeah, it's not just about the wild stories we hear about, all these programs that launch ships out of Antarctica, all these corporations that are out there, these extraterrestrial crash craft, pyramids, secret bases, ancient ET bases or modern bases. There's more to that. There's so much more than just the hype.
Correct. You're right. And I'm not trying to discount the value of any of those other positions or perspectives. I am just trying to add there's a very serious and real reality of what's going on there. And if we can start to get all of these different gears to mesh, we're going to get a bigger picture. Again, we all have a piece of the puzzle. And if we don't start figuring out where our pieces interconnect with those around us, we're never going to see the big picture.
Yeah, but I just wanted a real accounting of what it's like to work in Antarctica as a tradesman from your perspective, the real thing that you do every day while you were out there. The reality is you worked at a station, you did your business as a plumber, as for the fire stuff, you went out in the freezing cold, and that was your adventure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the visuals of the sky, no one could ever take that from me. The beauty of the auroras at the South Pole are indescribable. Fantastic electric green flames just billowing. I can tell you that no video does it justice, because the darkness and the contrast What you have to do to your camera to be able to capture it butchers what you actually just saw. And you wouldn't know that unless you saw it in reality and then saw it in the camera. What's happening in the camera is not representative of what people see that are standing there.
And if you had a chance, would you go back to work in Antarctica again?
If I had to go back to Antarctica to work again, I would. Mostly because I'll go anywhere that I have to work. I didn't intend to go there the first time. I don't intend to go there ever again. But if it turns out I find myself in Antarctica again, and fix things to the best of my ability. I mean, that's what I do.
Well, like if you were given a contract, would you just grab it and go?
No.
No? Why?
They'd have to give me a reason to go there.
Well, if South Pole Station, if they said we need you to fix this and this is a good contract, better money, would you take it?
Better money would definitely be a relative term that they would have to justify, and duration. I'd be open. I guess I'd be open to the conversation, but something would have to change from the variables that we had last time, for sure. Under the same parameters, no, I wouldn't go back. But if they had a new, better offer, I'd be interested in hearing what they call better.
Yeah, because you previously told me that they promised to extend the offer, but it didn't go through as promised. So you were kind of like stuck under different terms.
That's part of my issue too, is why I would want it to be written out better. When we were there, technically Raytheon was in the process of losing the contract. It was expiring, and the new contractor was potentially going to be coming in while we were stationed at Pole. So our employer was potentially changing. And we were told when we were hired on that our contract was going to be expired during our tour. And that what would happen is that either the existing third-party contractor, being Raytheon Polar Services, or the new third-party contractor would just extend our contract. Not sure how familiar everybody is with legalese, but an extension of a contract is literally just changing the date and maintaining all other parameters so everything's the same, just carries it out further. What they offered us was not a contract extension. What they offered us was an addendum, which is a modification of the parameters of the contract. And that's just evil to do when you're captured at the South Pole Station and you don't have a leg to stand on to get out of there or argue. And what they did was they changed the bonus structure on us. So we were previously guaranteed a bonus. I think it was like 22% of your salary. So when you're talking a year, I mean, this is a substantial amount of money. And what they were offering us was to now change it to performance-based. So they were trying to sell us on, hey, now you can get up to 28% of your bonus. Doesn't that sound fantastic? I said, no, because I imagine you're trying to give me zero. Well, why would you think that? It's because you're changing my contract when I have no leg to stand on. It seems really scary that you're even attempting to do that. So no, I don't trust you at all. And I think you're trying to ruin us, you know? And it was a big deal. And I don't need things like that happening again.
Yeah, and you discussed that there was some kind of a cook that came out there and that the contract was weird. He was a cook, but he was doing something else that you...
Oh, that was not a gentleman that was associated with me in the Antarctic program when I was employed there. That was after the fact that I had taken employment in Alaska, and I ran across a guy, and we were just BSing about other places that we had worked at before. And he had found out that I was in the Antarctic program, and he says, "Oh, Raytheon." And he told me just straight out, this is what I was told, take it or leave it. He told me that he was hired to be a cook on a cat train, which is one of those systems that you were discussing before, the sledge and the drag sleds, and they go driving all over the ice, pulling systems around like that. And he was a cook for one of these crews. And he said that even though he was sworn to secrecy, sign this, sign that, he goes, I don't care. I hate them. I hate Raytheon. I hate what I found out was going on. And we were on a cat train, and we were trying to find good sites for missile sites. And that's what we were doing. And I said, I believe you. That was the conversation that we had. He felt obligated to tell me his past history in Antarctica when he found out I was there. So I listened. That's what he told me.
And what were you doing in Alaska for work at the time?
At the time, I was working in a facility doing maintenance at the same facility that gentleman was cooking at. It was in the oil fields up in northern Alaska.
And you mentioned that you had worked on some kind of plants, nuclear plants or something to do with a plant. You had
I've done all kinds of, I've done power plant work, not nuclear, but I've done a lot of power plant work. I've done waste plant work, water treatment plant work. I mean, darn near any kind of facility, I've turned wrenches in some capacity or another. As a tradesman, I'm pretty well-rounded. If you stick me in a building and things are broken, I'm going to get it figured out pretty fast.
What's the most interesting facility that you ever worked in? Outside of Antarctica, or like just the most interesting job facility you've ever worked on and done?
South Pole might be up there, but I've seen a lot of really interesting facilities and machines. I guess off the top of my head, I can go right to South Pole because of the engineering that it takes to accomplish the mission. I had a lot of respect for that. So it was very challenging to get the work done. I guess the way you're phrasing the question is almost twofold for me, because when I look at interesting at work, there's two kinds of interesting for me. One, something I've never seen before, so I find it interesting. But most interesting to me is when it's a task I've never seen, like something that's broken I've never had to fix before, or just it's going to be the hardest version of it. Like, you know, I enjoy the challenge of what I do and overcoming and doing things that other people can't seem to get done. So when you say like the best facility, to me, it would almost be like the hardest repair. Like, what's the most challenging repair you've ever worked on? So in my mind, I'm trying to think of what was the most difficult task I was ever presented. Those usually happen in emergencies, I guess. You know, something just blows up, explodes, things are leaking and dumping, and you got to start figuring out how to get it back together fast. Those challenges, I guess, are my favorites. Those sites. I guess hazardous sites, I guess, are my favorite sites to work at. I need things to be going wrong. I need something to break, and I need to just start hammering down and getting things back the way that they were.
Yeah, so you like the travel and you like exploring and seeing different places.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. In my side life outside of work, I absolutely love traveling. We try getting down to Latin American countries very often. Love the food down in the South American and Central American countries is fantastic. That's very much my palate as of late. The people are so nice, friendly, accommodating. It's great to meet new people as well.
And just to go back to Antarctica, who sent you there? There was a science society or something? Because in the secret space program, you had posted who was funding the thing other than Raytheon. The Society of something, your certification.
Oh, it's the National Science Foundation is effectively who's funding the United States Antarctic program. If you're to follow the money, it officially goes from Congress. Congress cuts a check to the National Science Foundation, and then the National Science Foundation cuts a check to the United States Antarctic program, and then the United States Antarctic program then divvies it out amongst the third-party contractors that they then hire to do the work. When I was there, it was run by Raytheon. Now it's Lockheed Martin, PAE, and a whole bunch of other military industrial complex contractors.
Yeah, because that's the most important question that I forgot to ask. How is that all? How does it happen in the process of sending you guys to Antarctica? Who funds it? Where does it start, and where does it end?
That's basically the funding process right there. In a nutshell, And then once you get down there, you just, start doing the tasking and watch them do things in the most inefficient way possible. That was another frustrating thing for me was, having had my own business and understanding efficiency and profits, it was just really disgusting to me to be in such a government program that, could care less, I guess, what it costs to fix that toilet. Get 6 new ones. I don't know.
Yeah, so it's quite a process, and then when you're not working, you're traveling, right?
Yes. Yep. As of late, I've been mostly just getting contract work, seasonal work, temporary work, short-term stuff, and then in between, just trying to travel as much as possible.
Well, your life seems very interesting, so that's what drew me to ask to interview you, because you've been around the world, basically.
I think it's very important. I think in the whole connecting the dot thing, it's kind of my core principle of what I'm trying to accomplish. Is I'm trying to promote people literally as human beings. I think we should travel more. I think we should talk to people more and share our own truths and listen to other people's truths more. I think we're losing this in society. We're getting stuck in our homes. We're not going anywhere, even in our own communities, let alone traveling to another country, or talking to another human being that's in a different language. Heaven forbid. What could possibly be learned if we all traveled more and talked more and communicated more? Holy cow.
And also your family history, you had mentioned your great-grandfather or something about seeing them have meetings, something about, I don't know, not Freemasons or Illuminati, something you had, during your conversations, you said that your grandfather was involved in something.
He had told me that he was Das Bund.
And what is Das Bund?
That I'm learning from the SSP program, because this was something that, I had no connection to, as a lot of people in the SSP programs are learning, is they're walking around with information in their head that doesn't make sense. And then all of a sudden they hear something that triggers something and it clicks and they can connect this and they can connect that. So one day I was observing something on one of the SSP pages, and as I was following it, I saw this term come up, Das Bund. I went, I know that word. What's that word? And I looked it up and was very surprised at what I found out. It's a faction of the Nachtwaffen folks, or a dark fleet. I'm still learning. But yeah, that was a shocker to me, because I remember him saying it with like pride, like he was this old school German guy. That was my grandfather. And I just remember him. It was something that he said with like gumption,
Was he into Freemasonry, all that stuff?
He was a very well-read guy, and I apologize. He died too young for me to remember anything of those specifics, because I was not old enough to have a mindset for that. I wouldn't be surprised. He was kind of esoteric, I guess you would say. Like, looking back now, I could say that he was, I know what it was on his bookshelves. And he was a traveled guy. Oh, this is an interesting thing, actually, about my grandfather, who was Das Bund. Only person I've ever heard of in my life in the United States Navy that during World War II was serving on the Amazon River in South America. I've never heard of anybody serving in South America. Obviously, we must have had some people there, but I guess my grandfather was really lucky to not be like in the war zone.
So you have a family connection of things and what you've heard and seen, and it connects to your own memories and experiences.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'm starting to put things together too, and that's why I basically decided to get that channel going, is because I feel it's obligatory at this point, just like when I'm working, right? And something goes really wrong, I feel obligated to help. Just because there's other people in the room that are also helping. Cool, but I can't stand around doing nothing. So now in my life, I kind of feel like I just showed up to a room when I found a whole bunch of people working on a problem that I'm apparently associated with. So I feel obliged to start getting in the mix and start trying to help fix this problem.
Yeah, and I was really interested in you as a person and Antarctica, and just what's a day in the life of a tradesman in Antarctica. Mm-hmm. I don't just cover SSP, I don't just cover aliens, abductions. I want to hear your story. Who is Eric J. Hecker, and why did he go to Antarctica, and why is he the way he is? That's the most important story to me about you.
Well, thank you for asking, and thank you for being interested. And I'm hoping that this could spread interest with other folks as well, because I do have a lot more info coming out. And I guess, like I was saying to you, the more I can figure out a good way to present it, the more I can present. So I'm just trying to, I guess, get a systems work and learn my new craft of video editing, I guess, and presenting this info, because I have been around, I have been to a lot of spots, I have heard a lot of things. We do have this new avenue of searching for information now that I am having wonderful success with because of the programs that I've been affiliated with. I know the keywords to hunt, the documents that I'm finding. I'm literally accumulating information faster than I can process it to divulge. So I'm trying to figure out a way to do it quicker.
Well, I know that we were discussing maybe not talking about the book, but I think it is important. So you have a fictional book.
Mm-hmm.
What's the name of it? Because
there's a book that was put out called Heller's Tale, and the idea was it takes concept of what happened at South Pole Station when I was there, in a fictionalized way, to give a presentation of what life was like down there. I guess you would say that that might be how you got interested in communicating with me, because it is a wonderful tale. There was a coworker that wrote it there, but it doesn't paint the picture of everything. It just gives a good insight to the day in the life.
Yeah.
I've gotten feedback from other folks that said that it was well written, and they did feel that it was inspirational as far as giving them vision as to see what it was like down there, because the author is a very good writer. But it's just another avenue of insight.
Yeah, because I did look at the copy of it, and it matches up with the discussion we were just having. So I'll include a link for it as well, so people could, go enjoy and read and find out more about your adventures and experiences in Antarctica.
I think it's a great story, and if you want to get a feel of what a day in the life was, I think that's a good artist's rendition of a day in the life.
Yeah, because we were discussing the book in the SSP group, and how do you link a book in the group, because you have to do it through Goodreads.
Correct.
Because Goodreads, it offers you many different varieties. Which libraries have the book? Who sells the book? Which stores, online and in print? So because the SSP group, we can't list prices of books or anything. We can only do reviews and stuff in the SSP group. So that's how you and I got talking about Heller's Tale and how to link the book from Goodreads to the group itself. So that was how we started talking in our discussions behind the scenes.
Yeah, because I never want to come in and step on toes, and I don't know all the rules and regulations, and this page has this one, and this page has, it's just like, what do? I don't want to mess up.
Yeah, there's so many different private groups and pages that have their own unique rules and communities and stuff. So even I'm one of the admin in that group, but even I'm very careful to make sure to follow those rules, because my own post could be gone if I don't do things properly in there. But that's how I heard about your book, and I heard about you, and I saw the certification because you posted a picture.
Oh yes, I forgot about that. Yes, that was an award that I got for that event. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's how it's funded. So what's the award again? Just so people know.
Which word is this you're asking?
The society, like the Antarctica, because it said you got the certificate.
It was that was the National Science Foundation, I believe. Raytheon and the National Science Foundation gave the certificate, the award for that repair that I had made for, I guess going above and beyond and stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's what clued me in. This guy's for real. He was there. He has the physical proof. Everybody asks, where's the physical proof that you were in Antarctica? You worked there, you did this and that. There's your physical proof. You actually, even though in that group we don't ask for proof, you've
Understood.
Provided it.
Yes, I wanted to, because I'm not trying to undermine anybody, but I don't want people to have doubts about what I'm saying. That's all. I just want to say what I have to say, have people appreciate I'm not a lunatic. It's just my experience as well. I'm deciphering my experience. You guys decipher yours. We'll all meet in the middle and have a conversation.
Exactly. So when I saw that, because I have memories of being in Antarctica and doing weird things for the secret space program, deciphering languages, artifacts, and these Atlantean outposts that are somewhat under the ice and whatnot. I don't have any proof of that. It came from hypnosis. It's in my hypnosis notes. I don't, other than that, I don't have any proof. But you actually have certification proof that you were a plumber in Antarctica.
Right. Right.
So,
the DD-214 that says that I was in a submarine, and I have all these other things. So to me, like looking back on my own life and trying to decipher what the heck is going on here, I have a lot of questions.
Yes, and we all do. Like, I don't know why I ended up in Antarctica. That's not I don't like being in cold places. That's not my idea of fun. But somehow I ended up there. But you were there, like, you have the certification to prove what you did in Antarctica. That's what fascinated me and why I wanted to interview you.
Cool. Very cool. I'm glad I put that up there then, because I'm glad we had this conversation. I'm really looking forward to, working with everybody and seeing what we can accomplish.
Yeah, and you're planning further interviews with other folks, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I want to talk to other folks on, like, I know there's already people that are reaching out to me for other interviews as well. I'm very much looking forward to that. But I also have my own agenda. I have my own questions that I also want to ask of you. I have questions that I want to ask of plenty of people, because I think, again, from my perspective, I think I have a couple of T's that I can cross, a couple of I's that I can dot. And if we can start to bring these things together, I believe it's for the benefit of everybody involved.
Well, yeah, we can do another interview and you can ask me whatever you'd like.
Excellent.
In the future, because I'm open to those experiences and communicating with others and connecting the dots.
Part of what I would almost be inquiring from folks, just to even give you a general overview, is I would like to start asking people to start explaining their whole process. Like if I was to talk to you and I'd say, like, El, I would like you to start from where you had no idea about this stuff. And I would like to start going in the direction of how you transitioned into coming in this direction to where you are, to maybe help other people pay attention for those cues.
Yeah.
Stuff like that I'm interested in.
Yeah, well, I know the A to Z from the beginning to here, so we could explore that in another interview.
Yeah, I have an agenda on that, because I think it would be nice to, if we could almost get like almost like a collective set of things that we're aware of, like red flags for people to pay attention to, almost like to help them, like, hey, look, these are the warning signs, pay attention, almost like an SSP intervention kit.
Yeah, we can do that in another interview. It's like we can set that up and we could record that if that.
I'd love to talk more about it, El.
Awesome. So thank you so much. And I very much enjoyed this interview with you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, Eric. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.